Hi, everybody. Today I'll be talking with Veronica Pavia and Nancy Williams from the Cleveland Hiking Club. Welcome, Ronnie and Nancy, and thank you for agreeing to share your Caspio and low-code journey. So why not kick us off and share with us a little bit about yourselves and your company?
Okay, well, I'm kind of a newbie to the club. I've been with the club for about a year. Ronnie's been around a little longer than I have, so it's actually been a good partnership between the two of us, because I bring some outside insight to the club, and she's got all the club history in her head.
And I come from a database background, so I did data migration in my working life. And so I'm the one that set up the Access database, which we still use in conjunction with Caspio. And it was sort of that, that background enabled me to see how much good a database could do for our club.
No, that's great. And I think obviously we talked beforehand, but it's really around what made you consider low code? Because I know you were using different platforms and things. What kind of drove you to think we need an online database?
Chance. Quite honestly, we spent a lot of time casting about for the right solution, and it was just hard because we didn't know what we didn't know. And someone suggested we take a look at Caspio, even though she had never. She had a database background, but she had never used it and was interested in it. And we looked at it, and we went to one of your demos, and a couple of us attended your 3 training sessions, and we realized that was the solution for us.
No, that's good to hear, yeah.
And neither Ronnie nor I are programmers. I neglected to mention my background. I was a business analyst, so I was involved in business processes. So I became more of the user interface person. Ronnie, with her database background, did kind of the back end stuff of the program. So, our skills kind of meshed pretty well when we started doing this. But neither of us are programmers. So having a low code was really important, because we both have some analytical background. That helped us with the structuring. But it had to be something we could use pretty easily, because neither of us want to learn code at this point.
It's interesting what you're saying there. It's a lot of our customers use our professional services team, who are the experts in low code and no code and building applications. I think what's fascinating about kind of where you two are is that you've built it yourself. You built the application yourself without very little support. Was that how did that go?
Fabulous.
Amazingly well. I think, I was very impressed, because I've done a lot of training in my professional career. I was very impressed with the training videos. I watched all of them and multiple times, because the first time through, it's like, oh, it can do this. Oh, it can do this. And then as we started working with it, it's like, oh, I remember in that video, they showed us how to do this. I got to go watch that again. So we relied a lot on the videos, and I was watching the videos. Ronnie was reading the documentation. So kind of between us, we pieced together a lot of things. And I mean, it was nice for us to have each other to kind of, gee, it should be able to do this. And oh, I remember seeing this. And part of it is, I guess I'm a little stubborn, and I look at a problem and say, I must be able to solve this. And I keep digging and poking at it until I do. So if you've got somebody with that mentality, there's a lot you can do with the low code.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was impressed. We had budgeted extra funds in case we needed to pay for some programming, and we didn't need to spend them, because we were either able to figure out a solution ourselves, or we would get a support ticket, and you guys would come up with either tell us how to do it or come up with a workaround that would accomplish the same task. So it came together really quickly.
Yeah, that's good to hear. And so you were using kind of Google Spreadsheets, MS Access before that. What kind of made you move towards having an online database? Was it something that you were looking to kind of improve upon, or was it efficiency savings you were looking for? What was kind of the key driver?
Probably efficiency. We're still going to use MS Access because we still need it. But, somebody had Excel or Google Docs on their computer, and somebody else had it on their computer. So we had all this duplication of data. everywhere because everybody needed, like, they needed our member listing for this and for that. And they were all doing it on their own PCs. And any communication, we had to send emails back and forth or files or whatever. And they couldn't talk to each other. So we weren't able to do the type of data analysis and information that would help us plan better schedules or make sure we're covering all the areas around Cleveland, because the information was all discreetly saved on individual computers. So we couldn't do that sort of reporting. So that's what started. I started with this idea about 6 years ago and couldn't figure out a way to make it happen until until the club made a commitment to do something, because we were concerned that, if anything happened to me or to somebody else, it was all the information was gone. And then we found Caspio, and it made it possible.
Oh, good.
And I found Nancy.
You're like a double act. It's great that you both got different skill sets.
That actually was part of the issue. Is Ronnie was the repository for anything that happened in a lot of pieces, everything with the Access database. And then we had another individual who had developed quite an extensive Excel spreadsheet, and it did an amazing number of things, but it was an Excel spreadsheet and it just couldn't handle the volume. And it was difficult to find things. We schedule 500 hikes a month. And so when they went to record a hike, they had to find which of the 500 hikes they were trying to record. Wow. So there was a lot of error being introduced, just human error, because it was just so big and it's just no longer manageable on the Excel spreadsheet. And frankly, it was kind of on crutches because we were asking it to do more than it was really designed to do. And then the idea that, well, we are a volunteer organization, and what happens if Ronnie decides she doesn't want to do this anymore, or if she moves somewhere else, or, we needed something that could be passed on.
Oh, good. So just tell everyone a little bit about your application. What does it do? Who are the end users, and how it works?
Basically, the way our club works is we have a group of people who have volunteered to be leaders, and they decide where they would like to lead a hike and what sort of hike they want to lead, and they record that hike. And that gets all accumulated. We record 2 months at a time, and then it gets validated and vetted and manipulated, and it ends up with a printed, published schedule that we put it on our website, as well as print it and mail it to our members. And so basically anybody who wants to go on a hike, they just look at the schedule and they show up. Once the hike is completed, we track member mileage on the hikes. So the leaders then have to report the mileage that each member acquired on that hike. So it's like a two-pronged process. We schedule them, and then we report on them. And then leaders and members receive little patch awards when they achieve certain mileage milestones or hike-led milestones. And so what the application allows us to do is to make it easy for leaders to schedule hikes and to validate the information. That was what was missing from the previous spreadsheet. They could put anything, anywhere they wanted.
Yeah.
This way we can validate the information.
Any way they wanted to spell a name.
Right. And so we do have code, things have codes, and now there's validation in place so that there aren't as many errors because we don't allow them to make them.
Yeah.
That's made it easy. And then from the reporting end, as Nancy said, there were a lot of errors. They would put the wrong hike date or something, this way, all they do is just, they just call up the hike they went on and then start recording the members. So it's really made things just smoother, more efficient, more error-free. Everything you would expect a database to do, it's done.
It sounds like its efficiency saving is the big driver in all of this then. Like, I know you mentioned that before, but I think it's over 1,000 members that you have as well. So it must make their lives a little bit easier as well to populate the information.
Yes. And the other thing that we're able to do is that because it was so difficult doing reports from an Excel spreadsheet, we couldn't provide information to our members like we can now. So we do have, we have a data page out there so that they can make their own sort of personalized schedule by just filters where they select certain heightened characteristics, and they can make their own schedule. They can also look up their accumulated mileage, or they can look up their hikes. They could never do that before because it was so difficult getting those reports out of Excel. I didn't do that, somebody else did that, but it was so difficult that we could only do some of that like twice a year. Now it's at their fingertips. And so I think the members, there's a benefit for the members as well.
Yeah. So kind of with you building the application yourself, what challenges did you overcome? Was there anything where you thought, I'm a little bit stuck here now. Do I need to look at the videos again? Is there anything that you came across where you were struggling a little bit?
Well, I know I struggled because I kept trying to make it do all these tricky little things. and there are some spots where you can use code, and so I know a little bit. So I would put something in and I couldn't get it to work. And I would copy it and put it in a help ticket. I'd say, this is what I'm trying to do. This is what I've done. I can't make it work. And the help desk was really helpful in getting us through this, because they'd come back to me, in the matter of a few minutes or a few hours and say, well, you left out a comma here.
Something as simple as
and
that.
that's what it was. I was doing something simple, but because it was out of my skill set, I made dumb mistakes, and they helped me find them. And really, when I would try to do something that, maybe the low code just couldn't handle the complexity of what I was doing, they would say, well, what if you did it this way? And they would get me thinking on another track. So I have nothing but high compliments for the help desk and the service that they provide.
No, that's great to hear, Nancy. And I think it's to kind of give comfort to anybody that's thinking about low code, that you don't have to be technically minded. It's pretty simple once you dig in and you get working on it. And then there's also our customer success team that I'm responsible for, and also our services and support team that they're there to provide 24/7 help as well, if you need it as you go through building your own application, if you don't require our professional services team, because we've always got that as well to support our customers as well. But like you guys, a lot of customers find it really easy and just move it forward themselves.
Yeah, and I think, one of the keys in starting out is to kind of create a sandbox area for yourself to try things out, because there were things that we learned going through the process that, I can do this here. I can also do it there, there, and there. So, there was definitely a learning curve, but as you get through the learning curve, it was like, and I can use that in all different places.
And I think it helped us because we had a real, I've been thinking about it for 6 years. So we had a real clear picture of what we wanted to have happen, and how the tables were already in my head. So the interaction between all the data, we had a real clear picture of how the data was going to interact with each other and what we needed that data to do, so that we didn't have to waste any time with that part of development. I had been documenting this for like 2 years.
Ronnie had actually documented it to have a programmer look at it. And, me coming in from the outside, I'm saying, there's no way a programmer could have done this, because we kept making these little, and remember this and remember that. There's just no way you can document all the little pieces of things that happen.
No. Yeah, it was awful.
Ronnie had pages and pages of documentation, and yet it's not possible to document it all. What we found good with Caspio is that, especially for me being relatively new to the organization, Ronnie could tell me something and say, I can pull that piece of data in, or I can move that field around on the report so that it makes more sense to the user. And we could do that ourselves. And that's part of the development. We talked a lot to the users, and they gave us feedback. They said, it would be really nice if we could. And I'd say, well, that would be pretty easy to do. I'd come off of a hike, I'd go home, and I'd move a field around on a report for somebody.
Well, and it was the idea too, that if we needed a field, somebody suggested something, we just threw it in the table,
Yeah.
just throw that field in there.
To a programmer.
Pardon?
We didn't have to send it back to a programmer.
No, it would have been a disaster. And I don't know, I mean, we actually miraculously, I had asked a friend of mine who was in database if he, I was going to ask him if he would be willing to help us.
Yeah.
And he said he would never take on a task this big in retirement. So I didn't ask him. He just said he would never do it. He thought I was crazy. And really, we purchased Caspio in December of 2021, in mid-December. And by March 1st, we were live.
That's amazing.
That's how quick.
Yeah.
That's how quick we were able to turn it around.
Do you
now, Ronnie and I worked pretty hard to make that happen.
We did. We worked really hard to make that happen, but still, this wasn't a lifetime commitment like my friend thought. He thought we would be working on this forever. And because Caspio is so robust and we had its structure figured out ahead of time, it was just a matter of implementing it.
Yeah. Do you get feedback from the end users about improvements that you could make to it that you put kind of in the pipe to consider making those changes, or what is the feedback from the end users?
They love it.
Yeah, it was interesting because we're a pretty old organization. What, 109 years is it, Ronnie?
Not 109, but 102, I think.
Yeah, 102. So, there's a little bit of a resistance to change at first, but I think if we took it away from them right now, we'd have a rebellion on our hands.
Yeah. There were many people who not only were unhappy about it, but really kind of tried to stonewall it and thwart it because they didn't,
they didn't think it was the right thing to do. And now they're like singing our praises. So
right. Yeah. I've heard from people. Yeah. I've heard from people that, they never want to go back.
No, that's really good to hear. So kind of really is that if people are considering Caspio and low code, what advice would you give them?
I think know your structure up front, know what you want to accomplish up front. You may change your approach as you go through it, but it's really important to have some sort of structure to kind of map out the flow of what you want to happen, or at least for your main processes, because that's kind of where we are. We tackled our two biggest processes, and we've got them mapped out. Well, Ronnie had done a lot of the legwork in her documentation, so that when we went in, we knew what we were trying to accomplish.
Yeah, we knew we knew what our tables needed, and certainly we've added fields as people have made suggestions, or we realized maybe we needed a field to facilitate something else we wanted to do. I would say the overall structure and design was pretty well set before we started, but I thought it was it was not, of course I had Nancy did a lot of the heavy lifting, and she did, I did the background stuff. Nancy's the one that built a lot of the data pages and made them work. So for me, I can say it was easy, but maybe not for Nancy.
Well, and kind of that, it's really nice that Ronnie and I had each other to work with, because she had the database skills. I had the user interface skills. So if you've got some people you can pair together that collaborate well, you can divvy up the work to the people who have those skill sets.
Yeah, I wouldn't have been able to do it without Nancy.
Absolutely not. Vice versa.
I think you're a great double act. You've got different skill sets, and look what you've produced is something quite extraordinary, really.
Yeah. So
really happy with it.
We're happy with it. We also had a very good team behind us that helped us with. We did a parallel of a couple of months of data so that we could match up our numbers to make sure we were producing good reports. So we had some help with that as well. We had some help with training the users. So it was really a matter of, we had the right people at the right time with the right application in Caspio that, it was an amazing implementation. We're pretty proud of it.
Yeah, that's great for the feedback. I really appreciate it. And kind of really the last question for me is, how do you see your application changing over time? Do you think there's going to be many changes? Do you think it's you might need more support? But it sounds like you two now have become technical experts in this. So I think you're good to move forward on your own.
There are some things that the club is thinking of trying that we will probably have to figure out how to work in.
Yeah.
There are things that the club hasn't thought of before. And there are, I think, there's some things that are still being done in Access that we would like to get them over to Caspio if we can.
Yeah.
I don't think we'll ever be able to eliminate the Access database totally, because there's a lot of other processes that the club does and reporting that I do that comes from someplace else.
Yeah, they're very unique.
Yeah. So, but I don't see any major changes. Do you, Nancy? I see.
No, I see that we can make some improvements. I have a couple people who've been bugging me about, oh, you got to get some QR codes so we don't even have to type names, just scan them and that kind of thing. But I think, with what Ronnie said, we have some things that we're currently doing outside of Caspio that I think we have some opportunities to move in. They're not any of our core processes, but I think that we can move them, many of them, into Caspio. We just have to have the time to do it.
I understand. Well, Ronnie and Nancy, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for being a Caspio customer and for sharing your Caspio and low-code journey. We really appreciate it. And hopefully talk with you both very soon. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you, Paul.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.